that we're good and we can do it all ourselves. We're independent, which is great. I think we can do a lot, but we're limited by our own knowledge. We're limited by our own perspective. And with how quickly business evolves and change happens, if we don't have people around us that think differently than us, that challenge our assumptions, then we're going to limit what we are capable of achieving.
Welcome to the Warriors at Work show. This is Jeannie Coomber, your guide and host. This is a show for men and women in the workplace who want to move from the predictable to the potent. This is your weekly dose of inspiration with an edge. I talk with CEOs and shamans, sports marketing executives and therapists. All of us are like-minded thinkers and doers who tell stories, share wisdom, and challenge each other to have the best life possible inside and outside the office. Welcome to your Warrior Conversation. Hey everybody, it's Jeannie. Thank you so much for joining me here at Warriors at Work. We are continuing our series about how to become better networkers and relationship builders. And this week, I have somebody with a ton of experience in this domain, Dr. Rosina Racioppi, the President and Chief Executive Officer of Women Unlimited. And WOMEN is an acronym for Women's Organization for Mentoring, Education, and Networking. She runs an organization that partners with Fortune 1000 companies in the development of high potential talent. So not only does she talk about her personal experience and how networking and relationship building has been crucial to her success and longevity, she also offers us a lot of wisdom from her book, Relationship Matters, and how women use developmental networks to step into their power and influence. Some really practical ideas and points of view, things that we could all lean into today to become better at this idea of building relationships. Dr. Racioppi also has a lot of wisdom based upon her doctorate in education from the University of Pennsylvania, which she talks a bit about in her dissertation around women's mentoring wisdom. So this conversation is chock full of ideas and thoughts to help us advance our networking and relationship building skills. Enjoy. Rosina is here with me at Warriors at Work. I cannot wait to have this conversation with you. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure, Jeannie. It's always lovely to be in the room with you.
So you are one of the most natural people to have a conversation with about this idea of relationships and building community. Mm-hmm. You are the president and CEO of a 30-year-old organization, Women Unlimited, Inc., the women's organization for mentoring, education, and networking. You've seen a lot in the company's history. Yeah. And so I want to start with one of the things that I think is really most important to this conversation. And it's all around your mindset when it comes to building community and relationships. What is Rosina's mindset?
My mindset is that there's always people that know things that I don't. And so I'm curious about that, right? Because I think one of the lies we tell ourselves is that, especially women, that we're good and we can do it all ourselves. We're independent, which is great. I think we can do a lot, but we're limited by our own knowledge. We're limited by our own perspective. And with how quickly business evolves and change happens, if we don't have people around us that think differently than us, that challenge our assumptions, then we're going to limit what we are capable of achieving.
We'll spend more time in our own heads, running ideas past ourselves. Yeah. It's always a good marker for me when I better get in a dialogue. When I'm starting to run ideas past myself, sounds like a good idea.
Yeah.
It's always...
We can convince ourselves of anything, right? And, what are some things that we believed 5 years ago that maybe we need to think differently, right? Maybe the construct, our context is different today than it was 5-10 years ago. So maybe I should be thinking about things differently, right? We shouldn't just rely on old knowledge and think that it's forever going to be true. That may not be the case.
Yeah, and that comes up a lot in conversations with executive coaching clients.
Hmm.
You're very often measured by your success around how you think.
Right.
What is your network capital that's influencing that decision? How are you testing your assumptions? I'm going to come back to this because you certainly make mention of this in your book
Yeah.
that you wrote in 2020 called Relationships Matter, which is dedicated to women seeking to grow and advance and the leaders who want to know how to guide them.
Right.
So tell us what the catalyst was for the book.
Well, when I went back to Penn for my doctorate, my research focused on how women create mentoring relationships and how those relationships inform their career development and career advancement, right? So, what was the magic that happened in those mentoring relationships? Because in the work that we do at Women Unlimited, mentoring and networking are core relationship components of the development experience that the women have in the program. And so I was really interested in, as I watched people, women in particular, engage or not engage in mentoring relationships, I wanted to better understand what are some of the things that if I can help women understand, if you do these things, if you approach the relationship in this way, you're going to end up getting the most out of this. It'll have the impact you're looking for. And so that's really what drove me for the research. And then post the research, I wanted to kind of share the insight so that women and leaders can have a better sense of, let's make this easier, right? How do I make sure that I'm getting the most out of these relationships? What are some simple things I can do?
Mhm.
And so while they're simple steps, it takes intention and focus to make sure that you're maximizing the relationships in your life to help you learn.
Mm. When you think about intention and focus,
Mm,
talk about that through the lens of what women in 2024 need to be thinking about.
yeah. Well, I think in 2024, I think women's lives have become more complex and compressed, right? So, really being clear about what is it that you want?
Mm,
What's the clarity that you're seeking from the conversation? Because oftentimes we can go into a conversation with someone. I can have a conversation with you, Jeannie, that I thoroughly enjoy. But if I don't have a focus of what I want to gain from the conversation, um, then it's just, a lovely conversation. But on the back end, I walk away feeling better, but really don't really have anything to show for it. So having that intention today, I think it's more important than it ever was because we're so busy, we don't have time to waste. So just
mm,
taking a moment beforehand, before you go into a conversation and think about what are those things that are causing tension in my life? Is it maybe I don't understand the direction of my organization. Maybe I'm not seeing the next step for myself in my career. I don't know what I would enjoy or what I would want. I don't even know if I want it. Those
mm,
questions are a great starting point. Like, you don't need to have, and I think this is what some women may get stalled by. You don't have to have the name of the position and the time frame allotted before you meet with a mentor. Just like, what are those things, those questions, those curiosities you have around the world around you? And start with those, because
mhm.
you're going to gain so much insight just by putting it out there and having that as the focus of your conversation.
Do you think there is a difference between networking and relationship building?
I think it's a continuum, right? I think there's networking, relationship building, sponsorship, mentoring. It's like all part of the continuum. I get a little frustrated when I hear conversations around, you don't need mentoring, you need sponsorship. You don't need this, you need that. You need all of it,
Mhm,
right? So as a busy person, as a professional, you need a whole cadre of different types of relationships to support you effectively. And quite frankly, the broader and more diverse your relationships, the easier it will be for yourself.
Mhm.
I do not need to carry all this knowledge myself. I can know people that have that knowledge. Like I don't, Jeannie, you know me. I don't really like a lot of in-depth analytical work, but I know people that do, and I could talk to them about it, and they can help me get what I need from that. Right? I may not understand technical aspects of certain businesses, but I know people that do, and I can
Mm.
reach out to them and talk to them about that. Right? So it just think of that when you just by taking that weight off your shoulders, you can focus on what you truly enjoy doing, what you do well. And just think of the additive nature of, well, if I know people that have other expertise and talents that I don't have, think of the impact that can have, right? I can just
Mm.
grab onto their knowledge, ask them about it, and it expands my impact that I can create.
You said something that's really important, which it really starts and ends with what are you curious about?
Right,
What's on your mind? Example, where is there tension in my career or in the organization? So it always starts and ends there. And then when you think about networking, how am I trying to create some sort of multiplier effect around something that I'm curious about?
right,
And then when I think about the relationship building, and I saw this very much in your book, it's how do you take that moment of curiosity now to the next level? Who are the people that I need to grow from or grow with and learn from, and then do something with at the end of it? So I love the idea of it being a continuum. So I want to jump into your book because it's very much related to what you just said. In your book, you talked about the 7 reasons we all need good relationships,
yeah,
and narrow the perception gap, move forward with support, gain advocates at all levels, acquire technical and business knowledge, think critically, experience mutual discovery and joy, which we forget that there is supposed to be joy here,
yeah,
and then
yeah.
navigate the ambiguity that comes with career growth. My 2 personal favorites, by the way, are the gain advocates at all levels and then navigate the ambiguity. Which reasons have you found to be most impactful to you in your career?
I think the first one, especially early career, right? So we operate in this understanding that we see ourselves in this mirror, right? Here's how I see myself. This is the way that I think I'm effective. Um, and that may not be how others are experiencing me, right? And so I remember throughout my early career, I would get feedback around my communication style. I'm very direct. I worked in manufacturing, which encouraged more direct communication. And people I'd get feedback, but it was kind of like, maybe you should not be so direct, or it was not even that clear, right? So I dismissed it because I was progressing, I was advancing. So, it took people a while to get used to me. All right, maybe I'm just a little slow to warm, but that's okay. And then one day I was in a meeting with a colleague. We were in a development program together. And he said to me, Rosina, I love working with you, but I don't think I'd follow you out of the foxhole. I'm
Oh,
like,
jeez.
I'm like, what are you talking about? He said, well, you don't listen. And I thought, well, maybe he's right. So all that feedback started coming back to me. And this is a huge challenge for women, right? That we don't often get clear, direct feedback. And there's a whole host of reasons why, but I wasn't getting that. And so when this gentleman was brave enough to say it, and I'm like, huh, that's right. Because what happens in your career is that what allowed me to be successful early on is my directive style. What was limiting me as I was getting into more senior roles is my directive style.
Hmm.
But no one was helping me understand how to moderate that, right? The shift that needs to happen. And so we see that happening for a lot of women. Like we get stuck in our development because we think what got us to this point is what's going to get us to this next level. But him saying that to me helped me understand, oh, I'm thinking I'm great, right? I'm good. But that perception gap, if you don't understand how you're coming across, how you're landing with people, how what your skills and talents are valued in the organization, you can have this wide gap thinking that you're going along the road being effective when in fact others are thinking, yeah, not so much. So it's
Mm.
important that you build relationships that help narrow that gap, right? So I think, while they're all important, if you don't have an understanding of how you're valued, how you're perceived, you can't even get off the starting gate.
And it's taking when you hear a lot of feedback like, "Oh, you're so nice."
Yeah,
Or my favorite is, "You need more executive presence."
yeah,
What does that mean exactly?
yeah, yeah,
And I love that he gave you an analogy, like a real life analogy where you're
yeah,
like, "Wow, I can't unsee that one. I know
yeah,
exactly what he's talking about." And you also talk about this. This was one of my favorite chapters. You dedicated an entire chapter to even busy people can build powerful networks, because I
yeah,
see this all the time,
right,
especially people that are entrenched in their role, head down, doing what they got to do. They don't have time to have lunches, coffees, or even talk to anybody that's outside of whether it's a functional line or industry line,
right.
whatever it is. So, what advice would you offer someone right now who fits that mold? They have their head down, they're in the work, they're not focused on relationship building or looking at anything outside of their organization.
Right.
What would you say?
I'd say you're running head down into the wall, first of all. And so one way to avoid that is just start small. Take one day a month and meet someone for lunch that is not in your area of discipline, right? So if you're in accounting, talk to somebody in sales. If you're in sales, talk to someone in operations. Meet someone who is in a very different role inside your organization, and just start small. The reason you're so busy and overloaded with work is because you're not understanding of the work that you're doing, what's the critical work that you really should be focused on. Having a network, especially within your organization, helps you align your priorities to the key goals of the organization. And if you don't know, if you don't
Mm,
have a sense of this work that I'm doing today is impacting these three areas that I know are a priority for the organization, then you're not talking to the right people. And there was a gentleman I worked with for years. He was an executive in one of our businesses. And he shared with me a story when he first started his career. He was a bench chemist in a company, heads down, doing work, and he got laid off.
mm,
And he said to me, I went to work every day, I did my work. I wasn't talking to anybody. And then I was shocked when I got laid off. And how could I have known? I wasn't talking to anybody. He goes, that's the last time that ever happened to me. And so what I like to remind people is, how often are you surprised by things that go on around you? If you're surprised a lot, it means your network is not serving you at all. And having that diverse network helps you understand what's around the corner and opportunities around the corner for your business. And it should not be just inside your company.
mm.
Who are you talking to that is in your industry? Because you can get best practices and bring it in. It just helps clarify what deserves your time and attention.
Well, it goes back to what you were saying before. It's like, what are you curious about?
Right,
Who are you getting into dialogue with about that level of curiosity? Is it the same people, which then recycles the same ideas, the same perspective?
right.
Or are you willing to go outside of whatever that circle is to get a different point of view? And
I was going to say, most people, to your point, will create a network of people that they're comfortable, right? It's like a little echo chamber. I'm going to be with people that just tell me I'm good, I'm nice, they agree with me. And while that's comforting, it's not helpful. Like, you really need people that are going to call you on your craziness, right?
Mhm.
Or maybe even help you think outside the box, push you outside the comfort zone.
Mm. What do you say to somebody that's like, I can't network virtually? Look at this hybrid environment. I don't have time to go to New York and have drinks and coffee and lunch, and virtual's too weird. So
Yeah.
how do you do this virtually?
It's so funny, Jeannie, when at the start of the pandemic, my phone was ringing off the hook with people asking me, how do you network virtually? And I would always ask them, well, how do you network? How have you networked? Before the pandemic, what did you do? Because it's the same thing. You pick up the phone and have a conversation. Um, it really, the special ingredient to networking is curiosity, not the platform
Mm,
that you do it in.
so true. How do you assess the health and well-being of your network?
I really think about um, perspectives that are missing, right?
Mm,
So, do I have people that have a deep financial background, or someone who, for myself now, that is um, running different types of businesses, right? I don't want to talk to only people that are in um, the business of helping women in organizations, right? That then I would just be talking to people who think like me and talk like me. I about a year ago joined a think tank, and it was actually started by the gentleman who started the program at the University of Pennsylvania. And it's people from academia, from business, from foundations. And all we talk about is the future of learning in organizations. Like what is
mm,
needed for the workforce in 2025 and beyond. And so it's nice to be with people that are not just thinking about the work that I'm doing, but they're pulling my thinking more broadly than what I deal with on a day-to-day basis. And so that helps me then come back with a set of fresh ideas, a fresh perspective. And it's a bit also renewing. When you've been working in a certain area for a long time,
yeah.
you can feel sometimes that you're a bit in a grind, right? So to take a step out and be with people that are doing other exciting work in other fields and other areas helps you then get re-engaged with the work that you're doing.
And it's really good for your brain health to
Oh my
change
God.
it up rather than keep playing the same thing over and over again. So, as a savvy relationship builder, I know you've had many, many, many pivotal relationships in your life and in your career. Who and or what was the most influential networking experience that you've ever had to date, and why?
Ugh. Well, I think of a couple. I've been very fortunate in my career that I've had really good leaders that I worked with. And when I was in the chemical business, in fact, when I joined Degusa, it was the result of a relationship I built. I was part of a group that met with labor attorneys on a monthly basis, and they would share different cases that they were handling to help us understand how we can refine our practices in organizations to avoid litigation. And it was a whole group of HR people from all different industries. And I met this gentleman who headed up HR for one of the chemical businesses. And over time, he said to me, I would really love to hire you. So I talked to him. I interviewed. Um, they were ready to offer me the job, and I found out that I was pregnant. And so I called him and I said, I would love to work for you. I don't think it's fair to start a job in this way. So I'm going to pull my name out of consideration. Um, Fast forward a year later, my daughter was born. I ran into him again at one of our dinners and I said, how's everything going? He's like, I just wish that I hired you because the person that we hired didn't work out. And I ended up joining the company a year later. Um,
Mm.
so that Now I tell you that story because it is because of that relationship that I met Jean Ott. So
Oh.
I worked in one of the divisions, and then I went to corporate. And Jean's mentor was very good friends with our CHRO, and because I worked at corporate, and it was like a filter. Everything that came across Ed's desk ended up getting, I ended up getting involved. So I met Jean. Um, we put women in the program. I mentored, and eventually, as you know, I joined Jean a few years later, and that relationship was special because while we were working together, and she had such an innovative mind and
Mhm.
just an approach to learning and evolving, right? That I learned so much from her, right? On how to put yourself forward, how to manage the business. So it was a wonderful relationship where we learned and grew from each other, and refined the work at Women Unlimited. So, for her, for that story, I mean, Jean certainly had the most impact, but I was fortunate that I had a whole host of people that I learned from along the way.
And your relationship with Jean, who for those watching and listening, she's the founder of Women Unlimited. You couldn't have two more opposite styles than the two of you,
Yeah.
and how you complemented each other in many
Yeah.
ways around the style, and how you grew together as a result of that relationship. So I am curious too, when you think about networking and relationship building, how do you feel those skills have helped you outside of your career?
Oh, well, I think well, I'm always looking for that next challenge. I don't like being bored.
Mm.
And so I'm always thinking about what's next. What's that thing around the corner that I'm excited about? What's the thing that
Mm.
I want to be focused for? I do when I think about where I am now. So our children we're empty nesters, so to speak. They are out building the life for themselves. Um, we moved to a town. I don't know anybody in this town. It really makes me feel disconnected. I don't like being disconnected from where I live. So I joined the women's club for Brielle because I wanted to be a part of the community
Mm.
that I live in. I want to know some people. I want to give back to the community and be involved in that way. So, whether it's my professional life or my personal life, I always look to make connections so that I can build the community around me that supports the life that we're looking to build.
Like, you enjoy being around other people. You get
Yeah.
a lot of energy from conversations and intellectual thoughts and perspectives. At least that's my observation of you. It definitely feeds you energetically.
It keeps life interesting.
Yeah. So who are the people you're following right now for guidance, ideas, or inspiration?
So every morning when I'm on my walk, I listen to a whole host of different podcasts. I love Adam Grant. People laugh. The people I work with laugh. Um, I'm in love with him. Because I like the way that he thinks, and he constantly is
Yes.
changing, kind of his um, evolving his thought. Right. I love people that aren't stuck in one way of thinking. That to
Mhm.
me is exciting. A lot of researchers, Ibira Herrera, I like her work. Um, I love Malcolm Gladwell. So, like I have a very eclectic group of podcasts that I listen to, some fun, some just to, help me think differently about the work that we do at Women Unlimited.
So, in the spirit of networking, I'm going to end our conversation. I'm a big believer in being in service to one another. And there's a practice that I do whenever I'm ending executive coaching group calls. And that is an ask, an offer, and an acknowledgement. So, what ask do you have of the Warriors at Work community? What can you offer? And who or what in your community do you want to acknowledge?
So I would say anyone who's interested in learning more about what we do, please reach out. Would love to expand kind of the companies that we partner with. Um, I would offer anyone who wants to reach out and have a conversation. I love meeting new people and expanding kind of my understanding of what they're dealing with, in evolving their practice and their work. Um, what
And
was the last? Oh,
acknowledgement.
so I think there's tiers. I want to acknowledge the companies that we work with because they truly believe in the importance of creating environments where women can learn and grow. To the women that are part of Women Unlimited, I am blessed with a group of passionate, creative women who truly believe they can help women advance and grow their careers. And personally, I'm blessed with a great spouse and community of people that support me in all the crazy things that I like to do.
Well, Rosina, very grateful for you taking the time to be here, to share your heart, to share your wisdom. Always a pleasure having conversation with you. So be well.
Thank you. Lovely seeing you. Love spending this time with you, Jeannie. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Warriors at Work show. If you are interested in learning more about what we do at the Warriors at Work show and platform, be sure to go over to my website, Jeannie Coomber, and subscribe to my monthly Warrior Playbook newsletter. I share everything that I'm up to month by month, as well as some lessons and insights that I've learned. I'm also interested in hearing any feedback you have about this conversation or future topics. So reach out to me directly on jc@jeanniecoomber.com or on LinkedIn. Be sure to tell your friends and your colleagues about this Warriors at Work conversation. Subscribe, review, and rate us. It's the best way to get this message out into the world. Be well.